Wholesaling vacant lots. Now, the most important thing you got to ask yourself, well, Rick, why would I want to do that? I actually said, I had this question come up multiple times as I was early in my career in wholesaling. And I, I just never I didn't wrap wholesaling with land. It wasn't a real common thing when I was doing it. And honestly, I left a lot of deals on my plate because I go, it's just land. How much money can I make doing it? Boy, was I wrong on that one. And I got to go back and like, as you get older, guys, and you get more wisdom, you kind of learn to go, I could have made a ton of money in land. And keep in mind, um, I was in the South Florida market, particularly over at what we call Port St. Lucie. Dude, there was probably 30 to 40% of like basic infill lots everywhere. And I didn't market to any of them. So I still did a bunch of them, but I did them mostly by accident until one day I decided to do them on purpose. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So let's talk about the advantages of wholesaling land. Let me fix something on here. Whatever, it'll work. What are the advantages of wholesaling land? Guys, it's the exact same thing of doing a property with a house on it. It just doesn't have the house on it. So I'm going to give you the obvious ones. Number one, they all work with cash. So you rarely ever work with any type of mortgage unless you have like a commercial type of land. Number two, I already said there's no house on it. So there's the only inspection is on the land itself. Okay. That's it. So when you get these properties under contract, go, Rick, how do I put a piece of land under contract? It's almost identical to doing a house. It's just you don't have that lengthy house inspection part of it. Okay. Land is land. God only made so much of it, and there's only so much you can do to it. So it comes down to what type of land is it? So I'm going to teach you some basic terminology of how land is described. Honestly, this took me years to grasp this concept. Remember, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm going to run harder and faster than anyone else. Number one, raw land. Okay. When somebody talks about raw land, it means it's never been developed. It usually has mature landscaping on it, trees, and they haven't built the pad up on it, meaning they put a certain amount of dirt to make sure it doesn't flood, meet sites of elevation. There's usually zero utilities. And guys, I'm here to tell you, raw land is expensive to get it build ready. Okay. How much? Just depends on the size. It can be $10,000 to $50,000. So utilities are usually the biggest holdup on raw land. So when people buy raw land, they know it's a long process before they build on it. So if you're in the art of trying to wholesale raw land, you've got to find someone that knows they're buying it and knows they're in it for a long haul. What's the long haul? Anywhere from a year to 5 to 10 years, because it takes a lot. You got to get the city's cooperation to bring in sewer lines. You got to have the power company bring in some sort of electrical grid in there. It's crazy what needs to go on. And remember, they usually service the entire block. Okay. So keep in mind with that raw land, understand the definitions because realtors will use this back and forth on you. And when you guys are looking for these types of lots, you got to understand the difference. The other type of one is basically what we call infill lots. And an infill lot is basically a lot that's already been cleared. It can have a dirt pad on it, but it already has utilities, and you'll see other houses peppered around into it. Those are my favorite because they're locked and ready to go. And a developer or some sort of investor or even an end buyer can buy that and have a house reasonably built anywhere from 7 to 12 months out. Still seems like a long time, guys, doesn't it? It's crazy. Okay. So you've got to understand the terminology of how you describe a lot, because if you don't understand it, it gets really, really confusing. Okay. Let me see here. So those are predominantly the two types of land. Now, I didn't get into agriculture or anything like that because you can still do that. It's just a whole different type of animal. Okay. I'm moving through this so I can spend as much time talking to you guys. So if you think I'm talking fast, raise your hand and I'll slow down. Let me see here. Omar says, will vacant land disappear at some point? I guess if Elon Musk has his way, we'll be flipping land on Mars. So I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime, but obviously it gets less and less as time goes. But there's a lot of places like Central Florida. I mean, dude, it's raw land as far as you can see. So as populations continue to grow, they're going to start going in the areas where they're undeveloped. And that's why you've seen a big push in like Arizona, Nevada, stuff like that. So your job is to try to find the trends and keep them going. So, okay, let me get back to the teaching moment here. So the next process we have to do is identify demand and pricing. Okay. So you're basically going to do a reverse engineering on this. The easiest way to identify demand and pricing is go out and find buyers and see what they're willing to pay. You can list anything you want on the market as humanly possible. Remember, that's just an offer price. What people are going to pay for stuff a lot of times is a different story. So the best thing to do is go out and find developers, find people interested in looking for raw land infill lots and see what they're going to pay. The problem is if you just decide to use Zillow and Redfin, those are just offer prices. Land can be wildly different from the offer price to the close price. So a couple techniques, okay, is you can easily go over to listrei.com and you can do a search there on the filter criteria, or you can go over to Zach Data. That's a great place to start to find your base price for what people are paying. But remember, in the end, when you reach out to buyers, like you connect on the phone, SMS, whatever you want to do, they'll tell you what you pay and you're going to have to adjust accordingly. So while we're going to verify some of this pricing of closed sales, and by the way, guys, you can use Zach Data or listrei.com. They're wonderful because they're built into you and you don't have to struggle finding it. You can get a lot of this information from your county data records too, if you know how to sort through it and do it, because land is land and you just got to find out how they tag it in the system. But if you're going to use the filters with List REI and Zach Data, the first thing you want to do is look for vacant land, pick the zip codes, okay? Figure out the lot size. So a lot of them will go from eighth of an acre to a quarter acre, half an acre to a full acre to like 5 to 10 acre lots. Depending on what type of market you're in, the most valuable ones are usually a quarter acre to like a half acre in most residential places. And those are the ones that I primarily like to focus on, but I'm a Florida guy. So just adjust it to your demand on that. So once you get that and you find these types of people that are looking for these properties, is now keep in mind, you're going to do this both on the buyers and seller side. So I'm kind of going through this quickly so I can spend time with you guys answering your questions. It is Friday night, you know? So once you do that, the one catch you have to do is simply, you're going to have to skip trace your list. Okay. You can do that at zachdata.com or whatever service that you prefer. Once you get it skip trace, that gives you your connection to reach out. You can either cold call them, you can SMS them. A lot of people like to do the SMS because land, the one thing I will warn you on land, this is a good kind of warning, is it is much more, how should I say it, less emotional. They don't live there. There's no real connection with them. It's just a piece of property they bought and either worked out for them or it didn't work out for them. And that's the deal. Let me clear this up here. Sorry, guys. And once we have that, okay. Hold on. I got to do something here. Let's see. I got to fix something. It's bothering me. Hold on. Sure. Okay. Once we find that, we skip trace it. Now you are going to make a decision how you're going to attack your market. Okay. You have to pick out your marketing medium. What do I mean by that? It's real simple. You are going to find, you either going to use, most people are going to do cold calling, SMS text blasting, or good old fashioned direct mail. Okay. So if you guys want to do direct mail or anything like that, just make sure you go over to mailingmastery.com and we'll show you how to walk through that whole thing. But you don't have to do direct mail. I'll just throw it out there because some of you guys, you know, it's a little bit easier. You got a little bit of money. That's fine with it. But most of you are going to wind up doing cold calling. Okay. SMS works really effective with landowners because, as I said, it is much, much less emotional. And that's how it works. Why won't this work? Okay. It's less emotional. The problem with a house is when the seller treats the house like a home, which a lot of people do, it gets really emotional when they sell it, and you guys know some of the problems with that. So this is one of the huge advantages of wholesaling vacant land, and that's why I love doing it. So the real question comes down to is, Rick, how do I put this strategy together? And it's really simple. Once you get a basis for what lots are trading for, so if you're looking at quarter acre, make sure you compare quarter acre sales, okay? And you're going to see a trend. You guys are probably asking, hey, Rick, are prices dropping on vacant land? Well, they're probably not going up in some areas. They might be, but remember, land is a supply and demand issue. So as less land becomes available, unless they release other parts of lands, the price can go up. Prices can drop down too when there's a lot of competition on it. So once you establish a base price, you're going to use your marketing medium to reach out, cold calling, whatever it is, and you're just going to reach out to the owner, find out the owner if they have interest in selling their land. It's usually very unemotional. It is a numbers game. And then if you know a lot's trading for 40K, you're going to go in and make a low offer. Why? Because the lower you get under contract, the more like you can make and the more options you have to sell it. Okay. They are not going to kick you out because you're doing this over the phone, because you should never, ever meet a vacant land owner at the property. It makes no sense. So for those of you that want to do this virtually, this is absolutely perfect. It's like a no-brainer. You do this really anywhere you want in the US, practically in the world, but you got to like follow other laws outside the United States. So once you have it, if the lot's worth 40, I immediately going to make an offer probably around 20 and just see what they spit out. Remember, you can always go up. You can't go down. Okay. They don't really get insulted. They just say no, or they kind of move on. And then that's when you do the volley method. They say, listen, I know if you didn't know, but what price would it be for you to let this go? Don't ever use the word price. Don't use the word offer, and just fish with them. Have fun with it. Guys, this is actually so much easier than doing houses. Okay. I resisted this for years and I deeply regretted it. The only thing I regretted more than this was waiting to do probates. Okay. So take this as my second calling to probates. You should be doing this method, because you got to understand, when somebody owns a vacant lot, they're not making any money. There's very little cash flow unless it's turned into a parking lot. And those aren't the typical lots that we're buying for this. So once you have that price, is even if you get, say they go, okay, I'll take it for 30 grand or 35, and you've already established the buyer at 40. Here's the key to it. Do not double close on these properties. Don't let anybody talk you into it. It's physically a waste of money. You have to sell vacant land via assignment of contract so you can squeeze out some of the thinner margins. I've bought lots as little as $1,000 and sold them for $2,000. The only way you can do that is via assignment of contract. If you double close, you would actually lose money. So if your margin is under 10 grand, it's critical you do an assignment of contract. But honestly, even if your margin's 50 grand, do an assignment of contract. This is normal when it comes to vacant lots. This is how developers do it. This is how investors do it. And this is how all wholesalers should do it. Why give your money to a title company twice on a piece of land that's never, ever been lived on? It's actually a waste of money, in my opinion. So if you guys are working with a buyer, which we're talking about right now, I'm moving through this as quickly as I can. Okay. You're either going to be working with a developer or an individual investor, which is my preference. I'm going to tell you, if you work with the big developers like the Pulte's, the GL Homes, stuff like that, you know, the big names in your area, it's like an entire process. You have to go through all these departments. You got to sign all these paperwork, and the big developers will push you to do a double closing. And I'm telling you, don't do it. It's just a waste of money. It just makes them feel better, and they have policies. Okay. They should take land whenever it's available. Now, when land starts to get scarce or they can't get them, they waive their double close policy and they will do an assignment, but you got to push it on them. So in these times where there's more and more resources available for them, I'm going to tell you is you can get away from these big developers. And by the way, it's so easy to find these developers. If you want, you can just go to Zillow, Redfin, any of these Trulia, and you do your filter search, and you're going to look and basically look for anything built from like 2021 and up in that area. And you'll see the builder, and they usually have their own sales team, and you can figure out exactly what they're buying the lots for. You can reverse engineer through the property records if you have to. You can go through listrei.com, whatever it is, And you can see exactly what they pay with these lots. But the values move up and down pretty quick with these lots. And we are going in a trend where builders are cutting back and scaling back a little bit more. So I want you to focus on individual investors, people that want to buy their dream home, or they're tired of waiting for a builder to build something. Actually, builders tell them if you can find the lot, we'll build it to them. They almost prefer to do it that way these days. And if you get an individual investor or like an end buyer, A, they'll pay you more, and B, they'll never ever question an assignment of contract. They don't care. So if you have to explain it to someone's new to it, make sure you use your title company. That is the best way. If you use a third-party authority and they understand that is the method of their operation, then they won't question like, hey, what are you doing? Because listen, let's face it. When you use an end buyer and you explain an assignment of contract and say you're sitting in a coffee shop or your parking lot, or even if you have an office, it sounds like weird because they've never heard it before. So when a licensed title company that has an office and been in business for a long time explains it, they don't question it. It's the same concept. If a lawyer explains you a process, you just agree with it. Same thing with a realtor. Like when they tell people, they take that for their word. And I'm telling you, use your title company. It helps out tremendously when it comes down to this stuff. And as I said on this, you all ask me, hey, Rick, how do I value the land? I'm here to tell you that the land value will be determined by your cash buyers. And you can look at listing prices and close prices, but putting your ears to the table, to the street, finding out what cash buyers are paying recently, you're going to have to make adjustments, especially in a declining market. So we have a market here in Florida that there's just lots everywhere. There, to this day, you ready for this? I can still buy a lot for $1,000 in Florida. Nuts. Like, but here's the problem, okay? I owned a bunch of these. They've been the same price for 25 years. So land, you want the wholesale land. You do not want to speculate on land. Okay. You will get killed if you speculate on land. If you think you can predict the future, you can't. You will never be right all the time. You will eventually get caught, and it's a real problem. So make sure you are wholesaling. The other advantage I forgot to tell you about wholesaling land, which is phenomenal, especially on vacant lots, is your contracts are usually pretty open-ended. Most of my contracts, the minimum I would contract a vacant land is 30 days, and every contract I write is 90 to 180 days. Dude, if I can't find a buyer in 90 days, I got no business buying that property. And you should heed the warning from the market. If you can't find a buyer for that, and say you bought it for $1,000 and you got really attracted by price, understanding you are switching to speculator mode and you've got to get out of it. Okay. So unless you're buying that land for your family to save it for like a rainy day somewhere down the road, do not buy based on speculation. It's so easy to get sucked into this world. And I'm telling you, you want to avoid it. Just because the lot's cheap doesn't mean it's good. Okay. Just because a lot is cheap does not mean it's good. And you need to understand that it is absolutely critical. So with that being said, I know I ran through it fast, so we're going to use the rest of the show to fill in questions, to answer direct questions, anything you guys got going on. And let me jump into the comments, and then I am going to go left to right here and get through it because we are full. So